So as you're coming in, if you could do a couple things. If you're a treasurer, you could participate in the quick poll. Let us know how long you've been a treasurer. So 0 to 1 years, 2 to 5 years, 6 or greater. And then one participant per conference, if you could choose, what are you using to keep track of your accounting and finances? So we have some options on there for you. And finally, if you could change your name to your first and last name. And then if you'd like to add your conference as well. So first and last name and conference. And you can do that a couple ways. One is to hover over participants at the bottom. You can click on that. It'll pull up a list on your right side. Then you can hover over your name, go to more, and then rename, and then you can rename accordingly. Or you can find your picture at the top, go to the 3 dots, go to rename, and name yourself accordingly. So it looks like about 41% of treasurers are, less than a year. It's pretty evenly distributed. 34%, 2 to 5 years, now up to 37%, and 23%, 6 years or more. Yeah, it looks like Excel is holding the day right now, 44%. Paper records 22%, serveware 16, QuickBooks 13, Quicken 6. NetSuite needs to work on their marketing. I guess they're at 0% at this point. We just have a couple more minutes and we'll get started.
We use Google Sheets.
Oh, Google Sheets.
Serveware was an option.
Yeah, it's the bottom one. Yeah,
Oh.
I guess we didn't capture everything. We probably should have had an other category there as well.
I clicked Excel because it's close enough.
Well, St. Anne's uses serveware.
Yeah, so that's the bottom option on that second question. You might have to scroll down.
I can't find the second question. I can't find those questions anymore.
At the bottom of your screen, there might be something that says polls. I'm not sure if it shows up for participants, but it shows up for us as the host.
It does show
does
up
not.
until you take the poll and then it disappears.
Okay, once you take it, it's gone.
I'm Martha Disbennett, and I'm sitting in for Rick Waddell, who's our treasurer. I've been the treasurer in the past, but a long time ago.
All right, welcome, Martha.
Thanks.
I'm Carl Vogt. I'm from St. Simon. I didn't see any questions.
Okay, Carl, do you see anything at the bottom of your screen? Does anything say polls?
No.
No.
You have to take your mouse and hover over it. It's where
Yeah,
participants,
put your arrow down
chat.
at the bottom.
Okay.
It'll
There it
pop
goes.
up.
now.
Andrew Dave Holton, Annunciata. Our treasurer's out of town, so I'm filling in for her.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Andrew, this is Martha from St. Martin de Porres. I don't know what system Julie uses.
Okay, yeah, this is just kind of a quick straw poll just to get a feel for that. So if you're not sure, maybe you can just refrain from that question.
It won't let me go on, though. It won't let me submit it.
Okay, so you have to do both at the same time.
Yes.
Take a guess.
Yeah, we're not.
This is a non-scientific poll.
Yeah, so we'll get started in just a minute because there's always a couple people that are maybe dealing with, audio issues or connectivity issues, and we've got quite a few connections already. It looks like we're at 84 participants, and right now it says 48 of 80 have participated in the poll. So if you haven't done that, if you could.
Well, you told me to click the 3 dot. Oh. No, don't click that mic.
Whoops, what happened?
Hi, Nancy, we can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Both Nancy's.
Both Nancy's,
okay.
okay. I didn't put Our Lady of Lourdes on there.
We can hear Nancy with two E's and Nancy with the Y.
okay.
Nancy with the Y is Our Lady of Lourdes. Welcome to you both.
Thank
I'm
you.
with St. James in Potosi.
Okay.
All right, Barry, why don't we give it like maybe one more minute for the poll and then
Okay.
we can end the poll just because it's going to be on the screen.
Sure.
Yeah, it looks like it's just to kind of recap where we are right now. 0 to 1 years being in the role of treasurer is 42%. And then the most prevalent way of keeping track of records is Excel, or someone mentioned Google Sheets, which have similar functionality.
17% are saying serveware.
Right. Yes, and we'll be talking a little bit about that in today's training.
Yeah, Excel's pretty popular. Some folks are using QuickBooks and Quicken, which of course are pretty popular as well. And then in the 2 to 5 year range, we have 37% so far. So we have about kind of close to the same amount in the 0 to 1 year and the 2 to 5 year range. And then we have a little less, but some at 20% in 6 or greater years. So we have a really good mix of longevity in the treasurer role, and that really helps for sharing knowledge.
What the 6 year or greater people don't realize is that we're going to look to them to be the experts for today's
Yes.
training, and we're just going to take a back seat.
Yeah,
I don't know about
I don't know about being an expert, Andrew. I've been trying to get rid of it for the last 2 years. Does that count?
Yeah.
Oh, the role, we hear a lot of that, but thank you for serving with a great spirit. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. So what we're going to do on this early part is we're going to have you muted just for background noise and feedback and so on. And we'll continue to be admitting people as the day goes on. But just wanted to welcome all of you and thank you for joining us. I think this is our first formal server training, outside of, some particular questions and working with team members kind of one-on-one and so on. That's, it's the first since October of 2019. And part of that obviously is with COVID, with the pandemic. It's been, difficult to come together, and we've been working on other things, and we've had some leadership changes as well with people on our staff, and so it's really good to get back and at them. And what a great response! Look, 86 participants on today's training, and we're not drawing from all 3,500 Vincentians. It's mostly treasurers, presidents. A couple people said, I'm sitting in for someone. So it's really, really warm response, and we're grateful to have you. Just wanted to mention a couple things, some sort of general thoughts. We'll do some introductions in a second, and then after those introductions, we'll do a little bit more housekeeping. First of all, I wanted to say this is a service to you to make sure that you guys aren't out in the heat, right? It's going to be like 100 degrees today. It's the very hottest part of the day. But joking aside, we need to keep our neighbors in need, those who don't have access to shelter and to air conditioning and so on, in our prayers. And obviously, thank you for all your work to serve them. Just a couple thoughts on today's presentation. This is a new slide deck, a new presentation that we've created, and we've tried to make it as engaging as possible for you, as rewarding as possible for you. And we make a differentiation between what we call formation and training. So today's session is called treasurer training, but it has so many formative elements. So we're going to have prayer, and reflection. We're going to have, small group discussion, large group discussion, and so on. You're going to get a lot of sort of nitty gritty brass tacks as well about what it means to be a treasurer, and what that role entails. The content that we've drawn from today is from several sources, drawing from the rule and the manual, and two different treasurers manuals, one that we had created for St. Louis specifically, one that was created by the national office. And we're also drawing from a lot of wisdom. We've reached out to you for some questions on content and what questions do you have, but also, wisdom from our team as well. So we've kind of synthesized all of that, put it into today's training. Just want to do a couple introductions. So I'll be one of your main presenters today, and my name is Andrew Casabaum, manager of Vincentian Formation, and have been with the Society just under 5 years. And it's been a great joy to do this work and to work with all of you. Our other sort of co-presenter today is Steve Rupp, who you might know. And Steve, do you want to just say a word or two?
Yeah, I reiterate what you said. I welcome everybody and thank you for being here. This is tremendous. 87 people now on this training. It's just what a blessing. What you do every day, we just marvel at in this office. We really do. And we are blessed to be able to serve you. And I've been with the Society for 14 years. And I love it. I just can't imagine myself being anywhere else because of you. You're just awesome people. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah, and Steve and I are on the same team, and Steve's just a great storehouse of wisdom from all that experience, that 14 years of being in his role. So we really appreciate Steve. A couple other people who are on the call. We're going to have Eric Weibel. I'm not sure if he came on. He is our Director of Accounting and Finance. And Barry, has he come on yet? Or
I was looking for Eric. I don't see him. Where are you, Eric? Are you on? I'm not.
I don't know why it says Brian, but
yeah, you threw us off, Eric. We saw Brian, so yeah.
Let me see. Where are you? Oh, there you are. I'm gonna rename you.
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Be charitable, Barry, with how you rename him.
I will. Eric is our Director of Finance and Accounting, and I will put that in there. And he's joining us as well today as a subject matter expert.
And Eric, how long have you been serving in your role? Because you might all have, met Deborah Downey, and she left several months ago, and Eric stepped into that role.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. I've been, let's see, I think next week it will be 3 months. And it's been a great experience so far. Everyone's been terrific. And
yeah, there's a lot to learn,
there
obviously, and but we're already tapping into Eric's wisdom and expertise on a lot of this presentation as well. A couple other people. Want to introduce John Doyle, who's our manager of Vincentian data, and who's going to be charged with kind of executing serveware and other sorts of data questions, and he'll be presenting a slide today. We have Tom Matashek on, kind of working the dials in the background. So we might not hear from Tom, but you probably know Tom from his serveware work previously. Mary Murphy's on the call. She is our volunteer car coordinator. So if you're sending in cars, you probably sent them to Steve Rupp or to Mary Murphy or some combination thereof. And if you didn't, they probably ended up in the, the ether somewhere that we never received. But yeah, Mary's just a very dedicated volunteer here with the Society. And also want to introduce finally Barry Shadle, who's going to be running the slides today. He's our the director of our department. I don't know, Barry, if you want to say a quick word, and then he's going to lead us in a Vincentian meditation.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, just happy to be here. Happy everybody's on. Looks like we have 90 people on this meeting now. So what a great turnout. Thank you so much for your interest in becoming more formed as treasurers and doing this training with us. We're going to start like we start all society meetings with a few moments of a prayer and reflection. Then we'll get into the content of the slides. So I'm going to start to share my screen here. Okay, can you all see that? Great. Okay, and this is a Vincentian meditation, and I'm going to read it to you. And I just invite you to quiet your hearts, kind of allow yourself to be recollected in God's presence to the Lord and presence to one another. Maybe we've been a little bit scattered before we've come here. And now's an opportunity just to gather ourselves before God's presence. Oh God, we thank you that in your infinite wisdom, you called certain people to the Vincentian vocation, a way to holiness by striving to conform ourselves to Jesus, by doing God's will and devoting ourselves to the service of God's suffering and poor. Help us to see the role of the treasurer of the Vincentian Conference as part of your divine providence. Enlighten our hearts and minds that we may see the work of all who steward and manage the resources of a Vincentian Conference as carrying out your holy will. Fill us with thanksgiving, Lord, that you want to employ us in a holy service. May our time together today unite us more closely to the heart of your Son, in holy friendship to your greater glory, by the power of the Holy Spirit. Amen. And as part of that meditation and in the spirit of that meditation, I just want to remind everyone of the why statement of the society here in St. Louis, why we do what we do, to seek and serve all in need so that people are inspired to grow closer to Christ. That's us, that's our neighbors, that's everybody. And our three essential elements: spirituality, friendship, and service. And then from the manual, the reminder of the primary purpose of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul is to increase the holiness of its members, and that we do this in a particular way through charitable works to the suffering and the poor. And so I just invite you to take a few moments on your own to reflect on how this treasure work is part of and connected to the larger mission of the society. Thinking about it in the sense of the larger mission of the society, remembering that the work of the society is God's work, that it's ultimately God's mission, his will, his wisdom. We'll just allow a few moments of silence before we move on for you to reflect on that. And we will conclude our meditation in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Thank you, Barry, for that meditation. You know, we have such a rich vocation that we're drawing from, a rich charism. And it's always great to kind of be reminded of that history, of that richness, of those, three essential elements of the why statement, and see everything we do within that framework. So a little bit more about today's session. I mentioned this earlier, there's going to be a mix, we're going to have some slides for you. Then we're going to have a small group discussion, allow you to interact with your peers and, introduce yourself to some other Vincentians. We're going to have a dedicated Q&A session. We have some subject matter experts that are going to be answering your questions, and Barry is going to be kind of facilitating that Q&A. And that's going to go until 3:30. And then, the formal training for the day will end at 3:30. But what we're going to do is we're going to leave the Zoom open. We're going to stay on the Zoom. Anyone who wants to stay on for that bonus time, any questions that you have, we're going to stay on and answer those questions for you. So we're going to be, working through the content, working through the slides. And if there's questions that you have as we go, if you could put those in the chat. And what we ask though is, let us sort of exhaust that particular section, to make sure that we're not going to cover your question a little bit later. But if you feel like we've exhausted it and you still have a question, you can put it in the chat and we'll do our best to answer it in the Q&A. We sent out a sort of informal request for questions a few weeks ago, and we built in a lot of those questions in the content of today's presentation. When we get to the Q&A, there's going to be some of those questions that you submitted. We're going to address those first, and then any questions that you ask during today's presentation, we'll address after those. If you don't know how to use the chat, it's at the bottom of your screen. There's a little icon, looks like a bubble, like a chat window. You can click on that, and that'll pull up a chat window on your right side, and that's how you would submit your questions. We do plan on taking a break about halfway through. We're just going to kind of gauge and see how we're doing at that time, probably about 5 minutes or so. But feel free to get up if you need to stretch out, grab a snack. If you need to use the restroom, feel free to do that. Wanted to also let you know that the session is being recorded today. You probably received a prompt when you came on today. And we're going to be sending this out to you and to all other treasurers who weren't able to join us, and hopefully make it available potentially on our website or on our newsletter and so on, so that you can refer back to it as well. We're going to send you all the slides as part of the follow-up, but we encourage you to take notes today, those things that really stand out to you, and only see the slides that we're going to send you as a refresher to what we're doing. And what we've tried to do on the content of the slides is keep things as intact as possible from the sources we drew from, so that if you want to refer back to the slides, you can see the full quote. You can go to the section of the rule, the manual, the treasurer's manual, to find out more information. All right. So just kind of moving from, that larger view of the society to what it means to be an officer. The treasurer is one of several officer roles in this society, and they all have great importance. The president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and the spiritual advisor make up the officer corps. And it's really important that officers are engaged with the life of the society, regularly attending meetings, engaging with their fellow conference members and in that capacity, but also going out, seeking and serving all in need, so that people are inspired to grow closer to Christ. So, going on home visits and, working directly with their neighbors is so important for each of us. And, it's been tough with COVID and, home visits being on pause, but we're starting to get back to that. And, those officer positions, it's essential that, one person's holding one position. So, we wouldn't want someone serving as president, treasurer, vice president, spiritual advisor. So in no event should any one person hold more than one officer position in the same conference at the same time. And, there's some situations where you might be a small conference. But that's when we get creative, we look at our recruiting, are there other people in our parish that could serve as a Vincentian who could be potential officers? Are there other people in our conference who could be officers? All right. Just a little bit about the spirituality of money. This is drawn from the manual and the rule. Most important point is, the money that our generous donors give us, we're stewards of that money, and it's ultimately ordered to serving our neighbors in need. So, part of that is our own formation. How do we best serve as the steward? We'll talk a little bit about that. And when we make financial decisions, we make them in light of the gospel. So we're elevating it from the human level. What do I think is best to, what is God calling me to do with this money? What is the society telling me to do based on its rich history? And then that focus on creativity. No work of charity is foreign to this society. So these generous blessings that we've been given, how can we be creative in how we, seek our neighbors and fulfill the requests that they give to us? All right, so this is just an overview slide. It's probably going to be a helpful slide. Just what does it mean to be a treasurer? And we're going to be talking about several of these points in greater detail as we go throughout today. But just wanted to get them all in one slide for you. You're safeguarding your conference funds, keeping accurate and appropriate records, receipts and expenditures, donations and so on. Providing a treasurer's report at conference meetings, submitting a complete and timely, what we call CAR. You probably heard of CAR reports. Conference activity report is short for, CAR is short for conference activity report. And those are done on a quarterly basis, and we roll all of that information into an annual report, which we use for our needs here in terms of our annual report that we create, and also providing information to the national office. And Steve Rupp is going to be talking quite a bit more about that in the second half of our presentation today. Arranging for an annual audit. I know we had some questions about that, and Steve is going to address that a little bit later. And preparing a budget if needed. The treasurer's manual says that most conferences don't make a formal budget, but if you have a special work, like if you have a store, or you have some special things you're doing where they have their own unique sort of financial situation. One of the fears, I guess, is that we might restrict our generosity to our neighbors in need. Sometimes if we prepare a budget, we might say, we're only going to give $200 per neighbor per year. We're only going to help someone, once a year, and it kind of comes, sort of formalized. It's good to have guidelines like that, but you also want to have, some flexibility and always err on the side of generosity and how we serve our neighbors. All right, so what is the role of the treasurer in determining, how funds are used? So remember that previous point on, decisions are made with reflecting on the light of the gospel. So all decisions are made by the conference as a whole, talking about them in the context of the meeting, always grounded, in prayer and in the rule and the manual. So the treasurer is cooperating in those discussions with the fellow Vincentians, but there's a couple times that the treasurer can step in and say, I don't think we're on the right track. And one of those is, do the funds exist in your checking account? We can't promise $1,000 at that time if there's $50 in the checking account. So just kind of making sure that, the requests are lining up with what's in the account. In the short term, obviously always, trusting in divine providence to fill the coffers later. And then is the transaction contrary to the rule? How are we called to be stewards of money? How are we called to spend money? And one of the questions that we get is on our next slide here. How are we called to use these funds? And we get this question maybe, once a month at the council office. There's a great organization that we like to give to you. They're doing tremendous work. Can we as a conference, make a donation? Can the society as a whole make a donation? And, this is drawn from the rule. The society, which means our conferences, our council office as a whole, may not allot funds to other organizations, except occasionally for other branches of the Vincentian family, save under exceptional circumstances. So the Vincentian family is sort of a broad constellation of organizations that were created or inspired by St. Vincent de Paul. And we're free to give within that, but when we step outside of that, we're going against the dictates of the rule. But one very generous way, as you probably heard of this, is called twinning. And so we like to think of twinning as being broader than just the financial. The three essential elements: the spirituality. How can we pray for our fellow conferences, our fellow Vincentians? How can we exercise that friendship piece? Potentially helping out with the conference, taking calls or going on home visits and so on. And then the third pillar of service, that financial piece, making regular contributions to another conference, perhaps in your district, perhaps somewhere else in the council, or there's some international twinning that happens as well. One of the things that happened with the war in Ukraine is there was a financial awareness campaign to donate money that ultimately got sent to Vincentian priest in Ukraine, because there's not the society there. So that was all, part of the Vincentian family. And that was sort of international twinning. That was a unique situation. And then just a practical item on using funds. So if you're writing conference checks and the amount is 500 or more, those require 2 signatures, unless the check is written to a utility company. And that's because we have built relationships with, Ameren and Spire and so on, and they're used to working with the society. It's a pretty regular transaction. But, if it's a landlord that we haven't met before, some sort of a large expense, then, 500 or more requires a signature, 2 signatures. And then just depositing and maintaining funds. A lot of what you're seeing here is drawn from the manual. Funds must be maintained by the conference specifically, and not maintained by the parish. And connected with that is, deacons and priests cannot be signers on your accounts with the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. And it can't be a personal account. So you're required to use the EIN of our council office, which you'll see at the bottom of your screen. It's 43-0652-684. Probably most of your accounts are already set up and using the EIN and the name of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. But it's always a good reminder, for our IRS, purposes and audit purposes and so on. And then when we receive funds, how do we be good stewards with them? Well, we deposit that money regularly and promptly, just to make sure that it's secure. And, we're not leaving checks sitting out. Someone made a donation and it's 6 months later and the check hasn't been cashed, making sure that we respond accordingly. And just a little bit about conference balances. We often get questions about, how much money should a conference keep, in reserve? Perhaps it's for a rainy day or in anticipation of some sort of large expense that a conference might encounter or a neighbor, is coming to us with. But, drawing from the manual, conference balances generally should not exceed what you expect to spend during an average quarter. So, you can look at your history of spending, how much money have you spent? What are your financial reserves? We're a little bit more generous with this. When we start seeing balances that are maybe 2 quarters or more, we might reach out to you. But you'll see at the bottom that if we see things through the lens of prudence, generosity, and trust in divine providence, where those three things overlap is where we're making our decisions. And if we have surplus funds, how can we be creative in sharing those, with needy conferences through twinning, special works and so on. And just want to get Steve on because he's got a couple good stories about just divine providence and, trusting and spending down accounts.
Yeah, I was in a meeting with John Foppe and talking about balances and talking about what the, and we didn't use the word in this presentation, but it's in the rule, and the word is hoarding. Hoarding sounds like we're purposely, keeping money from the poor, and really that's not the case necessarily. But sometimes, conferences are blessed with excess funds, and it's really incumbent upon them to ensure that those funds get spent on the poor as quickly as possible. Because he was asked, he was asked the question, well, shouldn't we save some money for a rainy day? And John's response was, it's raining today on the poor. And I thought that was a very prescient thought, that it is raining today on the poor, and we need to be able to get those funds into the hands of the needy as quickly as we can. And then I was, another thought, when I see down at the bottom it says trust in divine providence. I was sitting in John Heithouse's office a couple of years ago, and we were having a little meeting, and his phone rang, and he answered the phone. It was a conference president, and the conference president said, I could hear, I was sitting right next to him, I could hear everything on the phone. And she said, John, this is so-and-so. And John, we are out of money. We are completely broke. We don't have a penny in the bank. What are we going to do? If somebody calls us looking for help, we don't have any money. We can't help them. What are we going to do, John? And there was this pregnant pause, and John got this big smile on his face. And he said, congratulations, that is awesome. And you heard her kind of just like, huh? And he said, don't you realize what you've done? You've done exactly what God called you to do. God inspired people to send you money, to donate money to your conference, and you spent every penny on the poor. That's exactly what God called you to do. Thank you for doing that. Congratulations. And he was all excited. And then we heard her say, well, thank you, but we're still broke. And so John said, yeah, but here's something else. You now have a better bond with the neighbors in need that you serve, because I heard in your voice that same desperation that you hear when a neighbor in need calls you looking for help, that they're going to turn our electricity off tomorrow. We don't know what we're going to do. It's 100 degrees outside. Can you help us? You now have that same desperation calling me. You got a bond now with the poor. What a wonderful opportunity that is. And then he said, you also are now going to have to depend on divine providence to refill your coffers. You've done God's work. You did what he asked you to do. He will refill your coffers. And then the third thing he said was, by the way, you're not broke. Even though you don't have any money in your bank at the moment, we have your back. There's money at the district level. There's money at the council level. So never turn somebody away because you don't have money. We'll figure it out. We've got your back. And John came into my office the next day, and as I'm sitting here, here's exactly what he said. He came into my office, again, smiling from ear to ear, and he said, Steve, you're not going to believe this. That conference yesterday that we heard on the phone, they just got a $5,000 anonymous donation this morning. Wow. And I tell you what, my blood just, what? And then I said, John, did you send them a donation? And he said, no, it wasn't me. And but that actually happened, and it happened, quite frankly, it happened another time, almost the identical story happened another time with another conference 2 weeks later. It was just unbelievable. John and I were just giddy about it. But that's what God does. He refills those coffers, and we have to trust in divine providence. So I just wanted to share those stories. I think they make a lot of sense as we go through our day here. We get to see these kinds of stories all the time. It's an incredible blessing. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Steve. And Steve's just telling a couple stories about just the divine providence that we see almost every day in small and large ways as well. being a Vincentian. It's definitely part of the history of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul. Even our founder, Frederick Ozanam, talked about how the society has been guided by divine providence. Just look how quickly it grew from Paris and spread all over the world, and did this tremendous work. And he's a great model for us as well, Frederick Ozanam, and thinking about how we be good stewards. All right, so keeping records, I just wanted to kind of set the stage with this quote from the manual 2.1. Conferences must keep adequate records and reports. Proper record keeping begins at the conference level with the conference treasurer, who must maintain accurate records of all financial transactions. And then there's just a couple specific things you want to call out here. In terms of keeping records, is that just a tally of what was spent. It's also the supporting documentation. So that might be receipts or invoices, bills for our neighbors, and so on. And then we ask you as the poll when you were coming on, what accounting system do you use? Making sure that you've got, something that allows you to keep track and is easy to use and provides you the reports that you need. And in just a second, we'll talk a little bit more about Serveware's role in that. I was talking to one of our accountants here who works with some of the conference audits and so on. He said it's just so important that if you have a bank that provides the electronic check images, I think it's become pretty standard, at least with a lot of the major banks. That way you can easily see, here's the check, who it was paid to, the date on the check, and so on, and you can get them all in a simple report. You're not having to look back at ledgers of expenses and so on. Everything's right there, visual. And then just wanted to point you to this resource, and we're going to be sending it out as a follow-up to all of you. It's the Treasurer's Manual that was created by the National Office. It's inspired a lot of the content here, but it's got a lot of just sort of, that nitty-gritty, here's the types of income you might see, the types of expenses you might see, and so on. It's kind of a lengthier manual, just giving you that heads up. So we tried to pull what was best for you today, but you might appreciate looking through that in its totality. All right, and then I want to hand it over just for this slide to John Doyle, who we met briefly in the introductions, and he's going to talk a little bit more about Serveware. And John, if you want to just say a couple things about yourself as well and your role and how long you've been with the society.
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, happy to be here. And I'm one of the newest members of the council office. In a couple days, I think it'll hit 2 months here. So yeah, feel very blessed. And yeah, look forward to meeting more people. Been yeah, happy to be serving the conferences and the society as a whole. So I've been kind of helping Tom get up to speed on Serveware, doing some trainings, and so happy to be that assistance and provide on-site trainings, Zoom trainings. Here at the office can respond to emails and phone calls. So always feel free to reach out with questions or problems we can try to troubleshoot. Serveware is not perfect, but it is a very useful tool. It looks like some of the conferences are using it to keep a lot of the records, and that's what it's designed for, to manage your activities. And ideally it will really help complete car reports more easily. And Serveware has customized their reports to meet our car categories that differ slightly from the national car categories. They have instructional documents and videos on YouTube that kind of help walk you through a lot of it. Again, Tom and I guess transition to more primarily myself, will be able to, kind of provide those in-person trainings if necessary. We've recently met with the serverware team, and there are going to be some new enhancements that are in the works, hopefully being rolled out by October 1st. For treasurers in particular, it can be a really great resource to track and pay assistances. Call takers can kind of request assistances and have things pending, and then as they get paid, they can get completed. And one of the best options is they can generate these quarterly reports and rolling dashboards of conference activities. One of our next trainings for treasurers will be focused on serverware, so we're going to kind of leave it at that. But yeah, feel free to post questions, and we'll do our best to kind of respond.
Thanks, John. I just wanted to get a little bit more specific too on our meeting with, or just the enhancements that are coming for serverware by the end of this fiscal year. Already, serverware goes a long way to helping you prepare your CAR report if you're using it for your records. But we're working on so that by the end of the fiscal year, it will do an export that would basically, if you're using it for your record keeping, where it will be able to have in our CAR template, in a template of our CAR, all the categories needed to fill out a CAR report successfully. So it's already a very useful tool for that, and being used for that by a number of conferences. And with these enhancements, it's going to become even a little bit more fine-tuned. So I encourage you to stay tuned for that. And also, if you want to use serverware as a treasurer, I encourage you to watch the treasurer training video that serverware created. It's a good video, and it's meant to help you configure your account so that you can use it for that. And what we will be adding to that before probably October, or right about then, is a more specific training to fine tuning it for these new enhancements for usage of council, for our council, St. Louis Council CAR reports. Thanks.
Thank you, John and Barry. Just wanted to mention that as part of the follow-up too, just to make it easier. So I'll make sure to include that link, to get you right to the training video. And there's also a slide deck as well that I think that can be used in tandem that would answer some of your questions. And just know that we'll have additional training coming. Final thing for me, and before we hand it off to Steve, is just, this is a retention schedule in terms of your record keeping. This is pulled from the manual, and it's got a lot more things on there, but they pertain to the secretary or other roles, but these are kind of the treasurer things. So just wanted to make sure that you had this in visual form. How long are you keeping your documents and so on, and making sure that we have everything we need just in case of an audit or an IRS requirement, or having to go back and adjust a record or something like that. So I'm going to pass it off to Steve Rupp. He's going to be talking about the CAR process, and also firstly, just a little bit more about what the audits look like. And after Steve's done, we'll take a short break, and then we'll have a Q&A after that, just to give you a little bit of a roadmap forward. So Steve.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. One of the things that we've got to be very cognizant of is being accountable for the funds, and being good stewards of the funds that come our way. I had mentioned before that that we are blessed to have incredibly generous donors, and those donors expect those funds to go out and serve the poor, serve our neighbors in need. And it's incumbent upon us as Vincentians to do just that. There's a a great story about St. Vincent who went to one of the homes of one of the poor in his parish, and was taken by the fact that they had nothing to eat. So then on Sunday he preached about it. And he hoped that the people in the pews were going to answer that call. And he went back out there Sunday night to see how this family was doing. And he said he was so impressed. He said, I was so humbled that the entire house was filled with food, that the answer from his parishioners was so overwhelming, that he was so proud of them. And then all of a sudden it hit him. Holy cow, 90% of this food's going to be rotten by the middle of the week. What have I done? I've created a monster. And he said, there's no lack of charity, but there is a lack of organized charity. And that he then became a stickler for being organized. He said we could have fed that family for a month instead of just for a few days, and then everything was rotten. Or we could have fed a bunch of people for many days. And so he said we have to be organized in what we do. It's not, and John Foppe says it's not enough to serve the poor. We must do it well. And in order for us to do that, we have the conference audits, we have our car reports that keep us on track to be able to serve at the highest levels possible, and to be accountable we have to be accountable really to the donors that are donating to us. We have to be accountable to our fellow Vincentians. We have to be accountable to our parish and our pastors. We have to be accountable to God for being good stewards of those funds. And the ways that we do that are we ask that the conferences every year conduct an internal audit at least once a year, or when a president or treasurer changes. Those audits are really process audits. They're audits that are done, they're not very complete audits. They're just about the processes that we use to do our car reports and the daily treasurer duties. And they can be done by 2 members. It has to be 2 people, 2 members delegated by the conference, and somebody who is not a treasurer or not an officer of that conference. It can be somebody from the council can help you find. Maybe you have a CPA in your parish that can do the audits, or it can be another conference. Oftentimes conferences will twin with each other on a bunch of things, and they can say, hey, we'll do your audit, you do our audit. It's got to be disinterested parties, so not officers of that conference. And so, as I said, many conferences work together to audit each other. And it's just a 2-page audit. It's what's called a simple audit or a process audit. And then we also have external audits that are done by the council. And there are about 12 of those are completed each year by the council's accounting office. And the reasons are these conferences, the ones that are audited are conferences that haven't been audited in a while, or might be having some issues with the car report that we want to be able to get to, to find out what the root cause of some of those issues are, or why the conference activity reports are in late, if there's anything that we can do to help them. And oftentimes an external audit or a complete audit. And these are audits that go through every receipt, the entire records of the conference, and they're done by our accounting team. And they're done pretty much by random. I mean, we say that there are some issues every once in a while, but they're really kind of rare. But we want to make sure that the conference activity reports are done on a regular basis, and that the accounting is there, and that these audits are done on a regular basis. So there's 2 different audits we'll be talking about. One is the internal audit or the process audit, and the other is the complete audit or the external audit done by the council.
Steve, is there documentation for that internal audit that we have available for conferences?
Send me a note. Any of you that need the 2 sheets I talked about, there's a worksheet and a reporting sheet. I'd be more than happy to send that to you.
Maybe we can send that up. We'll send it out with our follow-up email as well.
Yeah, let's just go ahead and send it. We'll send it to everybody. That's a good idea.
But also in general, anytime you're in need of any of this documentation, feel free to reach out to our office.
Yep, you bet. So the car, the famous car, not that car. We confuse, we've been using the terminology CAR report for many years, which stands for Conference Activity Report, not to be confused with the car repair program, not to be confused with the car purchase program, but the CAR reports are the Conference Activity Reports. And they're done every quarter. Our fiscal year of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul begins on October 1st and concludes on September the 30th. So the first quarter is October 1st through December 31st. The CAR report is due within 30 days of the end of that quarter. So by January 30th, the CAR reports should all be in. And conversely, the second quarter, January 1st to March 31st, after 30 days, those are due by April the 30th. The third quarter, they're due by July 30th. And the fourth quarter, they're due by October 30th. And then we take those CAR reports, assuming that they're all in, we take those CAR reports and we roll them into an annual report for each conference. We have 139 conferences right now, and those 139 conferences annual reports are done by the council, and they're using the first, second, third, and fourth quarter reports that roll into then the annual report for each and every conference and for the council. That's our accounting to the IRS, and that's our accounting to the national office, and that's our accounting to our neighbors in need. That's our accounting to our donors, that we're doing these on a regular basis. And if we're not doing them on a regular basis, we want to offer our help to help conferences that might be stuck, that there's something that's holding them back from getting those conference activity reports on time. Mary Murphy, who's on this call, is an incredible, I call her an Uber Vincentian. She is at our office all the time, and she inputs all the data from the CAR reports, those 139 CAR reports, every quarter. She puts that data into our system, and she just does yeoman's work, and she is there to help you. She has people come down here. She goes out and visits with people and helps them with their conference activity reports if they're stuck on something. So don't be afraid to call us. I can help. John Doyle can help. Larry Kenny here in our office and our accounting can help. We've got plenty of people to help you if you get stuck with your CAR reports. So we strongly encourage that those are put in on time, because if we have to file our IRS 1099 and we're doing it without those 139 conferences, if we're doing it with only 135 of them, there's a possibility we could lose our 501c3 status because we're filing a false report. And so that's vitally important that everybody get their CAR reports in on time. So this is just a little bit of a project that we've done down here. This is the CAR report. It's a process mapping what happens from the time that a conference starts filling out their CAR report, keeping the records, compiling the records, recording the records, sending the CAR report in, having those CAR reports inputted into our system and rolled over into the final version of our annual report to the IRS. What happens from the time that starts till the time that ends? And we mapped all of this out. If you take a look at those various Post-it notes, the dark yellow ones are what the conferences do. And then the blue ones are what the council does. What's our responsibility? And then the light yellow are what the district presidents do and what their responsibilities are in ensuring that the CAR reports are done on a timely basis. We're in the process of going through this literally item by item, every nuance and to try to make this as streamlined as possible, as easy as possible on our conferences to be able to file their CAR reports and file them on time. So we're in the process of doing that. And this treasure training is one of those process improvements. We are so excited that we have 90 of you, 90 Vincentians on this call. That's just absolutely fantastic. So this treasure training is the beginning of that process. And then we're going to send a trigger, if you will, a reminder email to all of you treasurers before the end of the quarter with a blank car report attached, not assuming that you have one, just in case. We're going to have a car report attached. And then we're going to have regular treasurer meetups to answer questions about the car report. We've been doing that. Some of you have been probably on the calls with our pregnancy care partnership. We've been having twice a month calls, Zoom calls, and answering all kinds of questions. And what it ends up, what it's really now morphed into is current Vincentians answering questions of new Vincentians. And we just kind of sit back and let the Vincentians take charge. And there are many of you conference treasurers that have been treasurers for a number of years, and you can answer those questions better than anybody for some of those new treasurers that are coming in. And then to improve tracking of delinquent car reports and communication with those conferences so that we know where there are issues and how we might be able to help you with those issues. And then improve training on how to analyze the data for errors. We had a conference, and God bless them. They were probably in a hurry, and they were filing their car report, and they said that they did 174,722 home visits in that quarter. And that's a pretty good quarter. But obviously that data was wrong. And there were a couple of other things on there that were wrong as well. And but that skewered all the data that we would then roll into that eventual annual report on behalf of all of our conferences. And so we had to go back and find where that mistake was, and that's time consuming to do that. So we want to be able to improve training on how to analyze so that we don't have those errors that hold all of us back. So the conference activity report goal is on a quarterly basis, 100% of conferences providing fully complete and accurate car reports on the correct form within 30 days of the end of the previous quarter, with the fiscal year information complete and compiled by January 15th, when we have to file our 1099 with the IRS. You do not have to file a 1099. That is done. That goes to the IRS, and only the council on behalf of the conferences file that 1099. So getting the correct form. We mentioned that we will send a treasurer's a reminder email before the end of each quarter, and we're going to be sending the forms and the access to the conference activity form, and you can go to these links and get them yourself, so that if you need more, you're certainly welcome to be able to log on to our website and get those. So we're gonna break for a small group discussion. From a treasurer's perspective, where is your conference successful, and where do you have challenges? From your perspective as a treasurer, that's going to be our small group discussion. Those are the two questions we'd like you to ponder.
Yeah, and before we do the small group, if you could ponder this, we'll just take a short break.
Oh, that's okay, great.
Yeah, 5-minute break. So it's 2:59 right now. So if we could be back at 3:05, and then at 3:05 we'll go into the small group discussion. But maybe just ponder this question, while we're taking a break, and then you'll be able to engage with your peers. So we'll see you at 3:05.
All right, good. And when everybody comes back at 3:05, I will assign everyone to breakout rooms.
Just a minute. It's 3:04, but if there was a question that you had, that we haven't covered, so other than the Q&A in your small group discussion, the content portion is complete. So if there's a question that you'd like us to answer, if you could put it in the chat, and then if we have time, we'll address it. What we promise to do is, if we don't address it in this training today, we'll respond to you personally, or if it's something that we think has a broader appeal, we'll make sure that other people see the answer as well. So feel free to put that in the chat. And in just a second, Barry is going to be sending you to small groups. So it's going to be about 4 to 5 people per group, and you'll have roughly 15 minutes to chat. What I recommend is maybe taking 2 to 2.5 minutes a person and, you know, sharing your thoughts. Then if you have time at the end left over, then it's kind of more open, you know, people can fill in the details, but really making sure that everyone has an opportunity to share, you know, their answers to the question. You might introduce yourself as well and exchange pleasantries, as they say. Let them know if you're a conference a conference treasurer, a conference president, or filling in. But the question is, from a treasurer perspective, where is your conference successful and where do you have challenges? So Barry, if you want to go ahead and launch, you'll be sent to a small group.
Will do.
Okay.
Yes, welcome back, everyone. And hopefully you had a fruitful discussion. We're able to engage with your peers, exchange some information, build some friendships, and so on. We're about to go into our Q&A session. And as mentioned at the beginning, Barry Shadle is going to be facilitating that. And he's going to be taking the reins from here. But I just wanted to thank you all for joining us. And as a reminder, you know, the formal session will end at 3:30, and Barry will mention that, but we're going to leave it open until 4, as long as needed, for any questions that are after 3:30. So we've got some slides from the predetermined questions that were sent by all of you, and then we're going to open it up to questions in the chat. So Barry, you want to take it over?
Yeah, I want to start. And actually, Mary Murphy, are you on? I'm not seeing you, but if you are on, could you unmute yourself real quick? Because Steve said you had a message about the cars, and that might help.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I just have some suggestions.
Okay.
First, put the name of the conference in the subject line. It's very difficult to find emails after the fact if we don't know what conference we're looking for.
The subject of the email, yeah.
Just have the conference name. Then on the car reports themselves, some of the issues we've been finding is people putting the banking information on the wrong line. They'll have their checking account number under the cash line. If we don't catch it, the computer accepts it, but it's going to throw your reports off. You know?
Okay.
Okay. Their ID number in the cell at the upper left, and the actual dates of the beginning and the ending quarters on the lines that the cells that those are required for. And on page 2, a lot of, and I don't know if it's the treasurers that don't have this information, but a lot of conferences aren't filling in that page 2 where it talks about the help provided, how many visits, what types of visits, how many people help, those kinds of things. And the signature page, the signature's at the bottom so that if we have a question, we know who to call.
Yeah, great. Okay, thanks, Mary. And then what I'm going to do is, since we're about 3:20 and we want to close at 3:30, like Andrew said, we'll close the meeting at 3:30. For those who want to leave, you're welcome to. If you want to stick around and hear some more of the questions that are in the chat, we'll get through those. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to go through these questions real quick, and I'll show you who responded to them. Probably we won't have time for elaborations on these questions right now until we get into the session beyond the parking lot session, if you will. But the first one was, do conferences need to send 1099s? And this has been a question. It was triggered by some news from National about the responsibility for 1099. And this is between Eric and Julie, this is the response we have right now. 1099 tax filing is the responsibility of the St. Louis Archdiocesan Council, and conferences should not submit any IRS tax forms or file 1099s. The 1099 tax filing requirement is not new, and the council office is identifying strategies to maintain compliance. So the mechanics of accomplishing filings like 1099s will need to be identified at a time closer to the filing dates. So basically stay tuned for more direction in terms of conference 1099s for conference activity, especially considering that note that came from National last year. And the second question was, do conferences need to obtain W-9s? W-9s should be obtained for all payees, preferably to payments prior to payments made. And so that was also from Eric. And Eric is on. And so if we need to elaborate on these anymore, he can elaborate after we close up. Question number 3, how do we handle issued checks that are never cashed? What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, Eric, are you on?
Yes.
Do you want to say something about that one?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to. So, I mean, when we do, we do our bank recs, and we'll have a list of outstanding checks that haven't been cashed. That, those funds are still the property, whoever they were written to. Now, Missouri has it's called an escheatment law.
You got frozen there, Eric, right when you were saying escheatment law. Right when he was getting to the good part, it seemed like, dang it. Well, we'll see if his connection unfreezes. Okay. We'll return back to that. Okay, thrift store vouchers. How do we track thrift store vouchers, since this is requested on the car? And Steve Rupp said this is under lines 330 and 335. These are recorded after the conference receives an invoice from the council. And question number 5 was on the car, where do you enter twinning received from other conferences? And again, Steve mentioned here that this is line 230, funds received from other conferences. Is that Eric? Is he back on?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, Eric, what were you saying there about the checks? You dropped out right when you were explaining what the escheatment law was.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that. I had some app pop up, but what we would do is we would handle it similar to like 1099s, where the conference communicate to council if they've got some old checks. Identify who the payee is, the amount, again, after a period of time. So it could be, 90 to 100 days.
Okay. To let us know?
Yeah, to let us know. And so even if the conference wanted to send us a list of when you do a bank rec, part of the bank reconciliation is to list any outstanding checks. So let's say on a quarterly basis, if they wanted to, email that to us at the council office, we could take a look and further investigate to see what makes sense to enter into the escheatment process.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, Eric. And if you want more clarification on any of these, you can also email us. This was one that Mary Murphy answered, what is the best way to reconcile a checkbook with the car? And if using the actual checkbook register to prepare the car report, as the instructions recommend, the beginning and ending balances of the checkbook register and the car report should be identical. So what we're gonna do is, I think what would be best is if we stop this screen sharing for now. And do you all see the screen share still?
Yes.
Okay. No. Okay.
I don't know about me, but I wasn't seeing the slides at all.
Since we came back? Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, none of those questions.
None of
but-
them were since we came back. Okay.
But you all will receive those slides. So all of that text that Barry just went over are on slides. We'll get those to you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I thought you all were seeing what I was seeing. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna close up and say a prayer, and we have a few more questions that were in the chat, so we'll stay as long as we can to answer those. If there's anything we can't answer now, we'll get back to you. But since we said that we'd end at 3:30, we want to make sure that those who have other plans or need to go, that you can go, but also you're welcome to stay on. And just on behalf of everyone who is here and participated, I just really want to thank you for your encouragement, your enthusiasm for being here for this treasurer training. The turnout's been amazing, and let's just make this the start of something a lot greater. You know, let's continue to support each other in this need for treasurer training and formation. And you know, just please feel free always to reach out to us and any needs that you have to help, just any questions that you have. And let's say a prayer in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Oh God, we entrust our time together today to your most sacred heart, the sacred heart of your Son. We entrust all of the sacrifices that Vincentians make, all of some of the difficulties we encounter. Lord, we unite it all to the sacred heart of Jesus, that it may be for your holy will, and that it may be for the good of those most estranged from you. And we just ask for your Spirit to be upon us, to bless us, give us peace in our work, give us joy, and especially a spirit of gratitude, for you have called us to a holy work, Lord, and we're so grateful for this. We conclude our prayer and our time together in Jesus' most holy name, in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, thanks. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull up some of the questions from the chat that were already there. And I know Steve is ready to answer a couple of them. And between the four of us, one of the questions Jim Wersch asked is about uploading the treasurer's handbook to either Servware or the council website. And really, we should be able to do both. So I will make a note for us to do that so that it's in both places. And the other question that we can't really answer right now was from Gail. It was a question about what happens with redistricting. We're not sure. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with all things new. So we don't know that, you know, we have to address that question when we understand the implications better of all things new, and if it would make sense to redistrict. But at this moment, there's no plans to redistrict. That said, there's the awareness that, you know, the need could arise after the implications of all things new, but we just don't know. So that's a ways off. I'm going to go through them, start from the top. So do checks over 500 that are backed up by Servware assistance requests still require 2 signatures? Tom, do you understand what that question is asking? Tom Matishek.
Yep, sorry. The question was on, which question was it? I'm sorry. I
Do
apologize.
checks over 500 that are backed up by serveware assistance requests still require 2 signatures?
Well, according to current rules, in our, any check except to utilities over $500 requires 2 signatures.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that serveware has much to do with it at this point in time for that rule.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So the short answer is yes.
You still need 2 signatures.
I was the one who asked that question,
Uh-huh.
and it just doesn't seem to add anything. Like if our conference president puts in a request in serveware to write a check over $500 for a rent or something, and then it doesn't seem to make any sense to then track her down to sign the check. But what I do for the records is I print out that request and attach the check stub to it.
Well, technically, I mean, again, I think we were just talking off during the break about maybe those rules need to be changed and looked at. I mean, that's currently what our policy in St. Louis says. Does that need to be changed? We were talking about that again off mic during the break. So
I know of several conferences who are not doing the 2 signature thing.
I don't think we're doing it at St. David's.
No, we're not doing it. I'm not doing it at St. Pius. It's 2022. We have a lot of expenditures more than $500 that aren't check. They're EFTs and their debit cards and all kinds of stuff.
Well, maybe it's to me, it sounds like something we need to look at, especially because of the EFTs and because of these other things. And we also mentioned that $500, unfortunately, isn't that much money anymore. Eric, do you have any input on this one? I know that this whole thing came before your time, this decision to have this in place, but is this something that you think we can look at, or it sounds like we need to look at it, but do you have any input on it?
I do think we need to look at it. The point's well taken about yes. I think I would. It's not completely related to this, but one of the things with our checking accounts is they're business accounts, or they should be, and the utilization of what's called positive pay banks, and that's a tool that helps prevent fraud. And so the 2 signatures, I think, as long as there's internal communication within the conference about what's going out, I think that's really the main part of it. And if a tool like positive pay can be used to reduce the possibility of fraud, then I think that's certainly would be a benefit.
That's adequate. Okay, well, I think probably for this one, especially hearing that.
I have a question on that. There's only 2 people, myself, the treasurer, and our president, on our checking account. That means that we have to get together and sign every check over $500. Well, people are out of town and they're on vacation. How do we what do we do? I don't understand that. I get that.
Yeah, I think that's something, again, you make a great point. I think it's something we need to probably look at in terms of, do we need to increase the cutoff,
Yeah, what would be a reasonable amount?
For me, I would think $1,000 would be.
Yeah, I was thinking 1,000.
Can I give you an example?
I would think it
I would
depends
also
on the process.
include a couple of categories like rent and twinning is kind of.
Yeah, we've got a lot of rent requests over $500.
If it went to 1,000, would that?
Are we supposed to add people to the checking account?
That's one option. You can add a, you know, a secretary or somebody else an officer on the signer line. Yes.
Well, I side with the guy who talked about the serveware request. If we've got it in serveware where we've got a request for that, why isn't that good enough for the treasurer to pay it?
Right. I think that's a good point. I don't think it's the dollar amount that's the issue. I think it's the process. If you have a process in place that prevents fraud,
yeah,
I think you're good.
That's what this was born from. This two signature limit was born out of it. We did have a case of fraud a number of years ago, and this was born out of that. That we've got to have a process to avoid that happening again. And it was decided at the time that two signatures, it was at the time over $400. And you know, as Barry said a little bit ago, $500 ain't what it used to be. So, you know, if the amount is $1,000, but there should be some, as you said, Tom, there should be some process at every conference that enables them to have the accountability for those larger checks.
Well, if you you know, what we do is we give the officers a report every month as to what was spent and where it went, and then we go through the different cases. So I mean, again, just going back to whoever just said it has to do with the process. Our people are exposed to what's being spent. So, you know, having two checks is rather redundant because we basically have, you know, five officers who review what has been spent.
Yeah.
And, you know, reconciling the bank account, you do have, I mean, I've had in business, I've had it where you had fraud. And that's where your new VP of Finance was talking about. The bank will cover you the first time, the second time you got to have positive pay. But the first time you have fraud, the bank will usually cover you. But anyway, I think it has to do with the process and communication, how well you communicate with your conference.
Well,
Great point.
Yeah, this is all good input. And what I think we need to do, because I don't want to spend all of our time on this one, unless Eric, do you have something else to add?
No, these are all great points, and you know, I think it probably makes sense again to circle back and evaluate what the right number is, and you know, it seems that everyone on this call understands it's really a process driven decision.
What if we say what is it now? It's 6:20. Would maybe if we give us a couple weeks to look at this and talk with some other Vincentians, and that we'll get back to you all on what we decided, what seems best. That way we don't belabor it and drag it out. But it seems like it isn't working the way that it is right now. I mean, that's what I'm getting back from this, that it's not practical. So let's see if within the next couple of weeks, I'm just going to say at the latest, hopefully it's quicker than this, but say July 15th, we'll make a change.
Good.
To update it.
And when you say talk to other Vincentians, is that going to include people like us who are doing this job?
Of course, Tom. Yes, of course. Yeah, I was thinking, you know, folks on our Vincentian Advisory Committee and then other people who are involved. I mean, Mary Murphy's already commented, but people who are involved in the car and that kind of stuff.
And the finance committee, this is something to probably run by the finance committee.
Yeah, because, probably should run it by the finance committee.
Which is made up of Vincentians.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, we get a copy of the check back, a photocopy of the check back from the bank every month. So, you know, people could track it from that, you know.
Sure. Yeah, these are all good points. Okay. All right. The next question I'm looking at is a question I don't know, Steve, this might be a question. If you can look in the chat, it's from Greg Ernst to everyone. And he said, our parish members who work at the thrift store, RE our parish members who work at the thrift store. We don't have any visibility of the donated hours, but do get an invoice when a neighbor takes some goods via a voucher. Should we be recording revenue for hours worked and the donation? He said it's usually a zero invoice. The invoice comes a month after the donation happens.
Okay, let me see if I can find that.
And I don't know if Greg is on, if he could elaborate on that.
The hours worked should be recorded. All volunteer hours are recorded to be able to create credits for that conference. Now, the donations is a completely different thing. I don't know hours worked and the donations. I'm not sure what you mean by the donation.
Well,
I understand the hours worked, but I don't understand what you mean by the donation.
Hi, Steve, it's Greg. So
Yeah, Greg.
what happens is when that transaction happens,
Yeah, I am, but
given goods, like almost like cutting a check to a neighbor in need, and we are supporting that person. So that's like an expense. Conversely, there's revenue that is recorded, revenue that's recorded when we have thrift store volunteers who are working at the thrift store, and credit is given to us. We don't see those hours.
Oh, you don't?
No, we don't see those hours because there's no visibility from the district.
Okay, let me make a note on that, Greg. I'm not totally familiar with how that process happens. That's it. HR does that. They keep track of those hours.
Yeah, they're being sent to the district president as far as I know. And so, but let's follow up on that.
The district president.
Yeah.
Yeah, our district president is sending those out to us, but we're not recording that as revenue. We're not recording the $200 times $10 as $2,000 worth of revenue. Is that what Greg is saying?
That's what my question is. Exactly.
Okay, yeah. Okay, Greg. Yeah, that is not recorded as revenue because it wasn't actual revenue. Though it didn't go into your bank account. The call reports record what's in your bank account and what you are actually spending. So
Okay.
you don't have to record those hours as revenue.
But you do record the hours as, your Vincentian's volunteer time. That goes on your car report.
Yes.
This really came up during COVID when all of our volunteers were not working at the thrift store, and we were cutting checks to the district because we had negative or no hours. So we were cutting checks for the items that were donated from the thrift store. So that's when I said to myself, well, I'm cutting a check now just because there were no offsetting donated hours. So we are recording an expense then.
Well, that's because you were paying for it. You
Right.
weren't paying for it with credits. You were paying for it with
Right.
cash.
Right. That's fine. I mean, it's just something I thought of during COVID.
Yeah. No, it's a good point.
And Greg, are you not getting those communications from your district president that Ann's getting?
I don't see those hours, but.
Okay, I'm just curious because those are being sent out by HR. Okay. Go ahead.
On the same point, don't you guys record that down there at the council office somewhere?
Record what?
I mean, like on your car report, like if I've got two people in my conference working 10 hours in a quarter at the thrift store, I'm never going to know that. Okay. But don't you guys know that? And don't you guys put that in the report somewhere as volunteer hours?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's in the report.
You guys are recording that, so we don't need to record it.
No. We're not recording it. We might have it in a database, but we don't add that to the hours that we report to the national office
Oh,
because it's done via the car reports. You at the
yeah.
conference, at the conference level, know the hours that your people are working. That's why, like Ann just said, she gets a report from the district president saying you had 100 hours worth of volunteer time in the store, and you put that on your car report that we had 100 hours worth of volunteer time at the
Well, I've
store.
never got a report like that from the district president.
All right, well, we'll check with the district presidents on. That's a good point.
Yeah, I've never seen that either.
Okay.
It just started coming out to us probably within the last 4 months, 5 months.
Okay. We'll check with the district presidents. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe it's just going, maybe they're just forwarding it to conference presidents and not treasurers. I'm not sure.
I've gotten a few of them. Yeah, they went to conference presidents, and then I guess the conference president could then share it with the rest of his conference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Okay. There's a question from Robert Lees, and the question is, are districts required to submit their own car? There's two ways to think about that. There's an aggregate car that is accumulated and that is reported to national per district. So it's the aggregate of the finances of the conferences per district. But then there's another car that would be just the district finances and per district. And that is something that is fairly new to us, but that national would like for us to start including in our annual reports. And so we have not. We know what the amounts are here internally, but in terms of like, for instance, reporting it annually to national, doing a specific car, if you will, in the national format per district is not something that we've done before. Okay, and Ann, I saw you on here. There you are. Hi, Ann. Okay, how do we record in-kind food donated to another conference when they then are going to record it when they give it out to neighbor?
So we don't want to be double recording is my question. So if we donate, $1,000 worth of food to ICD,
yeah,
does that get recorded anywhere? And the same question really on thrift store credits. If our thrift store credits are in kind because they are garnished by our people working at the store and we are donating those, do we put that in kind other, or do we put that on a special note on the back, how you can put notes?
Hey, Mary's on here. Mary sees these all the time. Mary,
Yeah.
what do you think the best way for them to do that is?
Well, if I understand her correctly, I don't know that there is a way to do it on the 2-page form. I would probably put it on the explanations page, just so there's a record that you gave those away, because the way the instructions say, anything that's donated is only recorded when it's given to someone. And it doesn't say anything about giving it to another conference, who then is going to donate it to a third person.
So on both of those, food and thrift store credits, we should not put under in-kind food or other. We should make a separate note on the back sheet. I mean, because it's a lot. So somewhere it should be recorded.
I think we need to check into this, because you can record in-kind receipts of things for the conference. I need to check the rules, but I mean, conceivably you could record that, Ann, as in-kind receipts of food, and then you could twin it, and that would be an outgoing expense of in-kind, or recorded as in-kind. The other conference could record it as a receipt from you, an in-kind receipt from you, and then hand it out to neighbors and record it as it's handed out. But
now, that might be a serveware, but it's not on the actual car report form. The car report form specifically says it's only noted when it's given to someone. The
Okay,
receipts aren't noted,
then I could be wrong.
but Surfboard might have it differently.
We need to check into this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Just check into it and
Good.
give it a
Yeah.
holler.
Okay,
Excuse me, when you check into that, can you look at also in-kind receipts of food and household stuff from organizations other than other conferences?
Like, what would you be talking about, Tom?
I get food donated to me from the St. Louis Area Food Bank. I get food donated to me from a Lutheran church or from a Catholic parish, but outside of their St. Vincent de Paul Society activity.
Yeah.
And I get, well, that's always really confusing to us about how I record that. And then when I distribute food, I know how much I paid, but I'm giving away a lot more food than what I paid for.
If you get, Tom, a donation from whatever organization it might be of food, there was no expenditure on your part. So that's an in-kind donation that when it goes out, you might know that it's worth, $500 or something like that. And you can record that on the in-kind page that you gave away $500 worth of food, but it's not recorded in your bank account because it was
Right.
an in-kind donation.
Right. So I every month when we do that, we estimate what the value of food
exactly.
to a family is.
Yep.
And then that estimate, we break down into what percent of that was food I bought and what percent was donated.
Right. As long as you keep those separate, that's fine. And some conferences I know they used to use $15 a bag or a box. $15 was what they figured that if we fill up a box full of stuff, it was $15.
Right.
Well, it's not $15 anymore. It's probably $30. But if you have a figure that you have arrived at saying we give our donations to our neighbors in need of food in a box or in a bag, and that box or bag averages about $20 or $30.
Right. And that's exactly what we do, but we don't record any incoming for that donated stuff.
And you don't have to.
And it's more than food, of course. It's furniture, it's bedding, it's clothing, it's all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. And you can price those things as best you decide what the value is, but you don't have to record them incoming because there isn't any place really to do that because it's a pass-through. It's an in-kind donation.
Now,
But you want to get credit for what you've done within the parish, and so that the parish knows that you gave away $500 worth of food or $500 worth of furniture. You want them to know that, and that's incumbent upon you to be able to put that on your car report through the in-kind donations.
Now, I think probably most conferences are not buying furniture or clothing to give away, but a lot of conferences buy food to give away, but then they also get food donated to give away. And according to the car report instructions, you estimate the value of everything you're giving away. Say you gave away $5,000 worth of food, but you bought $2,000 worth of food. So on the car report, you would only show that you gave away $3,000 worth of donated food.
Yeah, and Tom said that's what he does. He said they keep them separate. Am I correct, Tom?
That's correct. We've been using $25 per family distribution.
Yeah.
Which
Great.
we think is pretty, who knows?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and it's really kind of an arbitrary figure, but it's not something that we're going to be held by the IRS. They don't care. They don't care about in-kind stuff. They only care about hard cash, and so you're fine.
Okay, what I'm going to do is somebody had asked who to contact with questions about car reports. I put Steve Rupp's contact information there just because he's been the main staff wrangler of it. Obviously, Mary Murphy plays a big role too, and she is our really volunteer coordinator of car reports. And so between, just like your questions today, sometimes we have to field questions to other people, and sometimes there's questions that we have to get back to you on. And so with Ann's question, I'm gonna make an email Ann to you and put it in there so that we remember it and so that we can track it and get back to you.
Who was the person you said, the first person you said besides Mary Murphy?
Steve Rupp.
Oh, send the question to Steve?
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Yes, I mean, Steve is the manager of member support, and that's really what he's here for, and he's got a lot of experience with this kind of stuff too. So it's a good place to start. And I wanted to see if Eric, are you still on the call?
Yes, I am.
Yeah. When is the next finance committee meeting?
July 20th.
So I had said I would get back to you by July 15th, but then when you said the finance committee meeting, let's wait until we can discuss this at the finance committee meeting. And if it's on the 20th, we can get back to you a couple days after it's over, but that's a really good opportunity. Maybe that Friday, the 22nd. That way we can make sure we get the Vincentians involved who have been called to make decisions like that, but keeping in mind that we want to make it as practical and as reasonable as possible. Okay. Our time is pretty much up. We're at 4 o'clock. Everybody's been on for a couple hours now, and we're probably ready to go do other things. But we're gonna be doing these these treasurer trainings regularly. We're going to try and do them at least quarterly, where there's going to be an opportunity for formation, sometimes more focused training, and also questions and discussion and stuff like that. So again, thanks so much for joining. And that's all we have today. I'll just conclude us in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all. God bless you.
Bye-bye.